This is It's a Mystery Podcast. Let us tell you a story. Hello, mystery readers. Welcome to episode 81 of It's a Mystery Podcast. I'm your host, Alexandra Amor. I'm a mystery author myself, and today I have an interview for you with Emily Organ. Emily writes 2 historical mystery series, and so today we're going to focus on her Churchill and Pemberley series. She's going to read to us from one of those books, and I love this series. I've read the free novella that she has available on her website. So if you go to the show notes at itsamysterypodcast.com and click on episode 41, there will be a link to, or sorry, not 41, 81. There will be a link to Emily's website, and then you can sign up for that novella as well. And so I've read that, and I'm reading the first book in the Churchill and Pemberley series. And the thing I love about these 2 ladies, the books are set in the 30s, and there's just such great banter between these 2 women. And you'll hear that in the excerpt that Emily is going to read for us. So that's about it for today. A short little intro. I hope you are doing well and staying healthy and enjoying the reading that you're doing. I certainly am spending a little bit more time reading these days. And so I'm wishing you well and safe, and as well, all your loved ones. And I will talk to you again next week. Bye. Emily Organ has been writing historical mysteries for 4 years. Her current series include the Churchill and Pemberley Cozy Mystery Series, which is set in a 1930s English village, and the Penny Green Victorian Mystery Series, which is set in 19th century London. The first book in Emily's Churchill and Pemberley series was shortlisted for Amazon UK's Kindle Storyteller Award in 2019. Emily lives in the south of England with her family. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Hi, Alexandra. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So today you're going to read to us an excerpt from Puzzle in Poppleford Wood, which is the 3rd in the Churchill and Pemberley series, correct?
That's right, yes.
Great. Okay, so take it away whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Remind me never to visit the bank again on Compton Poppleford's Market Day, Pemberley, said Annabel Churchill as she sank down into the chair behind her desk. It's complete mayhem. Countless yokels have crawled in from the countryside and blocked the roads with their rickety carts and animals, all of which have seen better days. I was trapped for 15 minutes in a crowd of noisy gap-teethed rustics with low-set ears. Most of them were wearing smocks. Smocks, I tell you. And I even saw a man in clogs. There's no excuse for clogs, Pembers. He'd be arrested for looking like that in Richmond upon Thames. How fortunate for him that he doesn't live there, then, replied Doris Pemberley, a thin, bespectacled lady with a mop of untidy grey hair. It's a different world altogether, said Churchill, adjusting her string of pearls. I thought I'd adapted to Dorset life quite well, but every now and again one is reminded of the region's particular peculiarities. Don't they have Market Day in Richmond upon Thames? They do, but it's a much more sophisticated affair up there. People unload their wares from shiny vans rather than carts riddled with woodworm, and the cows and sheep behave with much more decorum. No rustic types? None. You get a few oiks from Hounslow, but no smocks, and definitely no clogs. Churchill smoothed down her silver helmet of lacquered hair. She was a large lady with a fondness for tweed skirts and woolen twin sets. But you only ever need one pair, said Pemberley. Of what? Clogs. Because they're carved out of wood, they go on forever. No need to ever replace them. They'll still be going strong even after you've died. Outlived by one's footwear, what a thought. And there's no need for any expenditure on new shoes. An advantage that should not be overlooked. Shoes are such poor quality these days, don't you find? A few bimbles along the riverbank and the soles are almost worn through. And the days of finding a decent cobbler on every high street are long gone. Clogs are the answer. Only if you're clinging to the bottom rung of the social ladder, Pembers. If one has any middle-class aspirations at all, they're a distinct no-no. Well, don't worry, Mrs. Churchill. The marketplace will soon be transformed for the unveiling of the statue of Sir Maurice Buckle Duffington next Tuesday. He sounds terribly important. Did he do anything particularly noteworthy? He was an adventurer. That sounds rather vague to me. Have we eaten all of our custard tarts? Yes. What about the iced fancies? All gone, but the man has been to put the letters on the door. The door letter man. Oh, how exciting. I was so befuddled by the chaos of market day that I forgot to look closely at the door when I returned. Let's take a peek at his handiwork. Churchill got up from her desk and walked over to the office door, the upper half of which was glazed with safety glass. The words Atkins Detective Agency had once decorated the glass, but Pemberley had invested a great deal of time in scraping off the word Atkins. What Churchill saw in its place displeased her greatly. Have you seen what he's done here, Pembers? No. Did you not check the door letter man's work before you paid him? No. Why ever not? Because I didn't think I'd need to. What could be so difficult about putting the word Churchill's on the door? My sentiments exactly, but he still managed to make a hash of it. How so? Get up off your chair and have a look, Pembers. Pemberley did as she was told and quickly joined Churchill at the door. Oops, she exclaimed. Since when did my surname become two separate words? He did mutter something about it being quite a long name and that there wasn't much space for it. The lettering on the door read Church, and beneath it was the word Hills. Church Hills Detective Agency, said Churchill scornfully, and he's forgotten the apostrophe. You often find that with sign makers, said Pemberley. They put apostrophes in where they're not needed and forget them where they are. And that's acceptable, is it? No, not at all. It's just what they do. And then get paid a tidy sum for it and go on their merry way. You'll have to telephone and get him back here. I can see myself that it would be quite tricky to fit the word Churchill's into that space. He'll just have to use smaller lettering. Shall I telephone and tell him exactly how he needs to do his job? You might have to. It's ridiculous, fumed Churchill, striding back into the office. Why must one be required to supervise every single task? It's terribly draining, Pembers, and we have no cake to sustain us. Could you please fetch some from Simpkin the baker? Any particular type? Anything at all. Churchill picked up the receiver of the telephone on Pemberley's desk but didn't get as far as dialing. Oh, hello, what's this? The headline of the Compton Poppleford Gazette had caught her eye, swiftly prompting her to replace the receiver. Mystery of Darcy Sprocket solved. What mystery is that, then? Let me fetch some cake, and then I shall elucidate. Would you like to hear the long and the short of it? Pemberley asked as she arranged 6 butterfly cakes neatly on a plate. Well, I've just read the write-up in the Compton Poppleford Gazette, but I imagine it's wildly inaccurate as usual. Am I right in thinking that Miss Darcy Sprocket was a girl who went missing 20 years ago? She was more of a young lady, about 20 years old. I'm hoping you've already put the kettle on the gas ring, Mrs. Churchill. I most certainly have. It should be close to boiling by now. Pemberley made a pot of tea and the pair sat down at her desk. Darcy Sprocket was the eldest daughter in the large Sprocket family who lived in a tumble-down place at the edge of Poppleford Wood, explained Pemberley. She made an excursion late one evening to fetch a basket of eggs from her great-aunt Betsy, who lived in a cottage at the heart of the woods. Your tale concurs with the newspaper report so far. Do go on. She fetched the eggs from great-aunt Betsy but was never seen again. The following morning her basket of broken eggs was found about 50 yards from great-aunt Betsy's door. How terribly sad. And now, 20 years later, we have received news of the bones. Yes, the newspaper says they've just been discovered in a place called Todderley Field, which is owned by one Farmer Jagford. That's right, and now the mystery has been solved. According to the Compton Poppleford Gazette's misleading headline, that is. Only it hasn't been solved, has it? How on earth did poor Miss Sprocket end up in that field? Well, that remains a mystery. Exactly. What did the police do about poor Darcy's disappearance? Please don't tell me that hapless Inspector Mappin represented the constabulary back then. He did, actually. Churchill groaned and bit into a butterfly cake. Inspector Mappin investigated but failed to uncover much, continued Pemberley. Why doesn't that surprise me? The Sprockets grew quite impatient with the lack of progress, so they instructed Mr. Atkins to investigate. Churchill raised an eyebrow. Did they, indeed? And how did my predecessor fare? Not much better, I'm afraid. Everyone was left completely baffled. Oh dear, that's disappointing. What were the theories? The only one anyone could think of was that the goblins got her. Churchill gave a yelp as she bit her tongue. Goblins? She spat through a mouthful of cake crumbs. That's what Great-aunt Betsy claimed. After she discovered the basket of broken eggs, she ran through the woods shouting, "The goblins have got her!" Let me just check that this was only 20 years ago, Pemberley, and not back in the Dark Ages. Yes, just 20 years ago. Do people still believe in goblins in these parts? A few. Old superstitions die hard. Churchill shook her head. Astonishing. Darcy Sprocket has been known as the White Lady since then. Why so? Because she haunts the woods. Churchill gave a start, causing her tea to slop into its saucer. People believe she's a ghost? Yes, she's the White Lady of Poppleford Woods. Good grief, Pembers, don't tell me you believe that yourself. Only when I wake up at 3 in the morning and everything's rather dark and quiet and lonely, it seems very real to me then. Don't tell me that Atkins believed in all this goblin and ghost nonsense. No, he didn't. He was the pragmatic type. Well, that's what you get with us detective types. Pragmatic to the bone we are. He was dogmatic too. In fact, I wrote a poem about him once and used both those words to make it rhyme. How lovely, Pembers. Do you mind if I have the last butterfly cake? My last one was ruined when I bit my tongue. I think I saw the White Lady of Poppleford Woods once. Oh, don't, Pemberley. I nearly bit my tongue again. What happened? I was walking in Poppleford Woods a few years ago with a friend, and that's when we saw her. What was she doing? Not a great deal. She was up on the path ahead of us, all dressed in white. Just as we were wondering who she was, she disappeared. Your friend also saw her? Yes, Mrs. Higginbath saw her as well. For a moment there, I thought I heard you say Mrs. Higginbath. I did. Your friend, Mrs. Higginbath? Yes. The large square-faced lady with all that long grey greasy hair? Yes. The lady who runs the library and refuses to let me have a library ticket? That's because you were rude about her nephew. I know why, Pembers, but that's beside the point. The point is that you consider Mrs. Higginbath a friend. She was once a friend, but then we fell out. Oh, I see. Well, thank goodness for that. What was the reason for the falling out? I lost a library book. Churchill gave a tut. Mrs. Higginbath strikes me as the sort who would be willing to part ways with a friend over something as insignificant as a lost library book. She even threatened to send the bailiff around. She is the sort of person who would be obsessed with life's trivialities, someone who's never had anything important or meaningful happen to her. She most likely has no idea at all what it's like to have real problems in life. I can't say that I do either. But you're not like Mrs. Higginbath, are you, Pembers? You're a nice person and she isn't. The difference is that simple. Anyway, this white lady you saw, are you certain she was a ghost? We couldn't think of any other explanation for it, and we couldn't think of anyone from the village who'd be wandering around the woods dressed in white. A rogue beekeeper, perhaps? Why would it have been? Beekeepers wear those white suits, don't they? But why a rogue beekeeper? Because if they're roaming around the woods, they're not by the hives, are they? They've gone a little off-piste, so to speak. Perhaps it was someone in cricket whites. A cricketer? Yes, searching for the ball. Perhaps it had just been hit for 6 and a fielder was searching for it. I think there was a cricket match being played nearby at the time. It rings a bell. There you go. Case of the White Lady of Poppleford Woods solved. Except it isn't. Somehow Darcy Sprocket vanished 20 years ago and no one knows why. There's only one thing for it, then. Churchill drained her tea and brushed the cake crumbs from her ample bosom. Do you have your stout walking shoes at the ready, Pembers? So this is Farmer Jagford's farm, is it? Churchill asked her trusty assistant. Yes, Sponbury Farm. Does he grow sponberries here? What are they? I don't know. I wondered for a moment if they were a Dorset thing. The two ladies stood on the crest of a hill overlooking the farmhouse and barns nestled in the valley below. The mellifluous song of a skylark carried on the warm breeze. Where's the field, then? Asked Churchill. Todley Field. It's over the other side of the farm. They continued on their way, and before long they saw a man approaching them. Looks like a farmhand up ahead, Pembers. Churchill called out a greeting as they reached the young man, who was wearing a flat cap, a shabby waistcoat and stained trousers. Mornin'. He doffed his cap. You here to see the Skellington? We're interested, if that's what you mean, replied Churchill, noticing that the young man only had one eyebrow, which stretched across the entire width of his forehead. Bobby Jagfords went and found it while ploughing. He's ploughed over it, and then when he's turned his tractor around to go over it, he's found a bone sticking out the dirt. He says he first thought as how it were an animal, so he's got off of his tractor, and then he saw the hip bones. I'm sorry, hip bones? Yeah, and your hips. Ah, hip bones. A pelvis, then. Is that what he saw? I reckon so. Anyways, he's thought I don't know no animal what says as hip bones looking like that, 'cause they look like human hip bones, see? A dog ain't got no hip bones like that, has he? Nor no other animal neither. That's when he saw it. What, the hip bones? No, he'd already seen the hip bones, hadn't he? No, now he's gone and seen the skull. Ain't no mistaking it's human when you see a skull like that. Indeed not. Anyways, he's gone digging around after that. Has he? Oh dear. He's gone digging around and he's found ribs and then them little backbones and all. Vertebrae? Dunno. Then he's pulled up arm bones, leg bones, toe bones, finger bones, neck bones, you name it, all of it, the old Skellington. It must be in rather a dismantled state by now, I imagine. Spectre Mappin says he's going to put it back together. The young man wiped his nose in the back of his hand and hitched up his trousers. Is he really? That might be interesting to watch. They're all saying as it's her. They are they? The White Lady of the Woods. Indeed, well, if you don't mind, we'll proceed along this path and investigate a little further. Everyone's been here today, he said with a grin. I told Farmer Jagford I did. I told him as he needs to go charging a sixpence to everyone what comes here. Let's hope he introduces the charge after our visit in that case. Come along, Miss Pemberley. Churchill and Pemberley walked through the farm and followed the lane that ran beyond it. Todley Field used to be 2 fields, said Pemberley. Farmer Jagford cut the hedgerow down to make it into one. And the hedgerow is where the skeleton was buried, is that right? That's what it says in the Compton Poppleford Gazette, and Bobby Jagford has ploughed it up. Before long they reached a gate with a bicycle leaning against it. Hanging from the handlebars by its chin strap was a police inspector's hat. Oh no, groaned Churchill. That's Inspector Mappin's bicycle. She took a pair of field glasses out of her handbag and peered through them. Darn these things, it takes forever just to get them focused. Why can I see nothing but sky? Oh, hang on, no, that hasn't done it. Would you like me to try? Asked Pemberley. No, thank you, I'll be all right once I've got these things focused and pointing in the right direction. They're incredibly contrary. Oh, I've got something now. Churchill found that if she squinted in a particular way, she could just about discern 2 blurry figures standing in the middle of the field. It's Inspector Mappin and Farmer Jagford, said Pemberley. How on earth are you able to see what I'm seeing through my field glasses, Pembers? I'm just using my normal eyes, aided slightly by my spectacles. Then you must have the vision of an eagle. Not really, they're just over there, look. Churchill lowered the field glasses and saw that the 2 figures were, in fact, larger and clearer without them. It's Mappin, all right, isn't it? She said. We'll never get a chance to do anything with him knocking about. We'll have to wait for him to leave. Let's scurry along and pretend we're just passing by. The 2 ladies continued on their walk. Hello, came a voice drifting across the field. Mrs. Churchill, Miss Pemberley. Pretend you haven't heard him, Pembers. Just keep walking. No, don't turn around and look at him. Oh, Pembers, you turn and looked at him. I'm sorry, I can't help but turn around when someone calls out my name. Tusk, Pemberley. Now we'll have to face that grumpy inspector. There we go.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I just love them so much. They're such a great pair. And I'm in the middle of reading the first book, Tragedy at Piddleton Hall. And so let's go back and talk a little bit about that, because it really sets the stage well, and explains that Annabel Churchill has come to this little town in Dorset, and her husband was a DCI with Scotland Yard, and so she set up this detective agency. So just tell us about her genesis and where you got the idea for that, and for her character.
Yeah. Well, I think I love the idea of a lady in the later years of her life just having a new lease of life after having been the wife to Detective Chief Inspector, like you say, for so many years. And then suddenly she's a lady who's got a lot of time on her hands. She's got a bit of money. And I think it's kind of her time has come, if you like, to do something interesting. And it kind of fits with the trope you often see in cozy mysteries of the little old lady investigates. So there's an older lady who's usually rather nosy as well, but actually has quite a clever mind behind, a fairly naive facade at times. And then I like the idea of just pairing her up with another old lady who has been the secretary to a private detective in Dorset for some time. And he's passed away, and Churchill's bought his detective agency. And yeah, I think that the main thought behind this was just the idea of these 2 ladies going about doing things they hadn't really done before, and bringing years of experience they've had doing various things and bringing that together and trying to get along with each other, as well as try and solve these mysteries they come across.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it was really cute in the first couple of chapters of Tragedy at Piddleton Hall or Hotel that Pemberley almost comes with the furniture in the detective agency. So tell us a little bit about her too. So she worked for Atkins for years.
That's right. Yes. Well, she has a kind of mysterious background as well, because she worked for Atkins for the private detective, and that was for a decade or 2. But before then, she was a companion to a lady of international travel. And she's never very explicit about what this involves, but basically she has pretty much travelled around the world quite a number of times with her lady of international travel. Again, we never really learn much about her. But I like this kind of mysterious background she has, because sometimes she can draw on this background without explaining too much. And, she shows knowledge about the most surprising of things that she's just come across. And I think Churchill's a bit envious of that, because while Pemberley was leading this interesting life, travelling around globe-trotting, Churchill was essentially being a wife to her husband, and she's been the dutiful wife, and I think she's really quite jealous of her partner's experience,
her life experience. Exactly. And you obviously have an interest in history, because both series are set in the past. So the Penny Green series, as we mentioned, is set in Victorian London, and this one is in the 1930s. What is it about history, do you think, that draws you?
Well, I think history is just something that fascinates me anyway. So that's it's nothing I've really studied academically, but I've always been interested in reading nonfiction about certain historical periods. So that's always been an interest of mine. But I also like writing mysteries set in the past, because I love setting the challenge of someone trying to solve a mystery when they don't have forensics to help them, and they don't have technology. There's no CCTV or mobile phone records, all these things. I mean, I love reading mysteries and thrillers myself, and a lot of modern day ones as well, but I really do like that challenge of people trying to solve mysteries, trying to solve crimes, when really they've got quite limited information available to them.
I like that too. I've written a series of historical mysteries, and that was the thing that really sort of piqued my interest, is trying to get them to solve a mystery without the aid of all our modern technology. And one thing that occurs to me too is, between your two series, is that there would be subtle differences in the language between late 1800s London and 1930s Dorset. Do you find that's the case?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think with with 1880s London, which Penny Green is set in, I think it sometimes has to be toned down a bit, because when you read contemporary accounts of Victorian language at the time, it can sometimes jar a bit. And I think this is a challenge that any writer of historical fiction faces, is you want to try and make it authentic, but you have to choose the language carefully. So it becomes this kind of mix between some quite traditional words they used at the time, but also presented in a way that's more accessible to modern readers. And I think with the 1930s, with the Churchill and Pemberley series, to be honest, I'm using a lot of phrases in that which I remember elderly relatives coming out with when I was younger, with, people who lived through those times. So I can just remember something my grandma or a great aunt would have said, like funny phrases that I remember I always found amusing. And I've kind of stored them away. In fact, I've got a list of funny phrases that I've written down, and I have to admit, Agatha Christie is one of my favourite authors, and some of the words and phrases you find in her work, I've got a great long list of very entertaining Agatha Christie sort of words and language. So again, it is probably modern enough to be accessible to modern readers, but it's just got that funny sort of oldie worldy feel to it at times as well. Right.
Yes. Yeah. So people won't trip up on it, but they notice the difference between how we speak now. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Right.
I love that. And do you, because I haven't read any of the Penny Green novels, but I gather that they're a little bit darker. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, that's true. Yes. I mean, I'd still describe them as light mysteries. Mm-hmm. So they're not completely dark, but yeah, Churchill and Pemberley is very light. So I'd describe that as cozy, whereas Penny Green, I wouldn't call it cozy mystery. But yes, it's a little bit more serious. And each of those books, I'm sort of looking at some of the darker sides of Victorian life. So obviously there's reference to poverty and workhouses. And yeah, sort of the grittier side of life. And but I mean, there are elements of humour in them as well. So I'm not going, getting too dark with it. but it's with those I'm trying to find more of a balance of trying to, look at some of the issues that were facing people in those times with very realistic backgrounds and settings, but also with some sort of lighter moments as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you've got, I don't know how many there are in the Penny Green series. There's quite a few, though.
Yes, so the 9th one is coming out in the next week or so, actually. I'm just getting the very, very, very final edits done. So, yes, just about there with it. So I was going to put it on pre-order, but with times being a little bit unpredictable as they are at the moment, I thought I'd just wait till that's completely ready. But that will be out. The Gang of St. Brides, that will be out in the next coming week. So, yes, so there's 9 books in that series.
And then 3 novels in the Churchill and Pemberley series, plus there's a Christmas novella, right?
That's right, yes, which I absolutely loved writing. So I'm halfway through the 4th book in the series, but I planned some other novellas as well. They're kind of nice little side stories, and I think it's quite fun to make them seasonal as well. So I remember writing the Christmas one. I think it was the end of last summer. And although nothing around me was Christmassy, it was great. I just felt like I was in my little sort of Christmassy bubble getting into that. Even put on a bit of Christmas music to listen to, to get into the mood. So, I think I'll do some more novellas like that as well, sort of set in different times of the year.
Yes, yeah. And so do you alternate between the 2 series, or do you just go with what pulls you at any given time?
Yeah, I think I do try to alternate because I know that, there are quite a few dedicated readers of Penny Green who very quickly read the book and then they want to know when the next one's out. So if they see you getting too distracted with another series, I have received a few comments saying, well, you need to be in with the next Penny Green one. But yes, I think I am alternating at the moment. The Churchill and Pemberley books, I wrote the first 2 sort of back to back, but almost 3 years ago now. And because they're really quite different from the Penny Green series, I sort of ummed and ahed about when I'd publish them. They just seem to be a side project. And I think for me, I just enjoy writing quite different types of story. Although they're mysteries, it feels good to write with different characters and different settings. I find it varies my writing a bit. Although I love writing both series, I do like to chop and change a bit between them because it just helps keep my ideas fresh. I think if I'm just writing about the same characters constantly, it can sometimes feel a little bit tired, and to have the difference between the 2 series, I find it really helps me to switch from one to the other a bit. And as long as I don't get too mixed up with the characters and what's happening and all the rest of it.
Yes, yeah, and I totally agree. I think switching between 2 different series, even maybe especially when they have a different tone, it's almost like a palate cleanser as you're going back and forth. And as you say, that you don't get sort of bored and tired with just writing in the same world over and over again.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. So this will be going out on the 13th of April. So by then, you think the new Penny Green book should be available?
Oh, definitely, yes.
Yeah,
that'll be coming out in the next week. So, yes. So by the time people hear this, the next Penny Green book should be out. Yeah.
Great. And then you said you're working on the 4th Churchill and Pemberley. Do you have an idea when that one might be out?
That's a good question. I'm hoping May, June at the very latest. I'd love to get it out as soon as possible. It'll just be between me and my editor really getting the work done. But yes, so early summer,
Great.
Hopefully for that one. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, so our listeners can look out for that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been amazing, Emily. Why don't you let everyone know where they can find out more about you and your books?
Okay. Well, probably the best place to start is emilyorgan.co.uk. And that's got all my books on there and a fairly obvious link to my Facebook page. On Facebook, I'm Emily Organ Writer, and I typically share quite a lot of sort of little historical background notes to the stories on my Facebook page. Those are the main 2 places. I am on Twitter and Instagram. I don't do too much on those at the moment. It's a matter of time, but I find Facebook is very interactive. On my page, I get some nice comments and messages from people, and I find that's a good place to interact with readers. So, those are the places to find me.
To find you, great. And we should mention too that there's a Churchill and Pemberley short story that's available for free at your website when people sign up for your newsletter. Absolutely, yes. So when you go to my website at emilyorgan.co.uk, there's a little banner at the top. And you can download a free short story, A Troublesome Case, which, if you want to give Churchill and Pemberley a try, you can go there and get a taster. Great. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Well, thank you again so much. It's been lovely chatting with you. Okay. Thanks very much for having me. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. You can always find episode show notes and links to the books mentioned on the show at itsamysterypodcast.com. While you're there, you can also grab your copies of 2 free mystery novellas by me, Alexandra Amor. Until next time, happy reading!